the torture and the death. Sarah Vaughn's wrists burned where the energy shackles bound her to the cold, metallic wall. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her body convulsing from the last wave of pain that had racked her nervous system. The dim red lights of the torture chamber cast eerie shadows across the sleek, alien machinery that surrounded her. Across the room, Inquisitor Zalvok, a towering, reptilian figure draped in ceremonial black robes, observed her with an air of cold amusement. His yellow eyes gleamed with sadistic curiosity as he tapped the control panel embedded in his gauntlet. "This is pointless, human," Zalvok hissed, his forked tongue flicking between his sharpened teeth. "Your kind is fragile. You break easily." Sarah gritted her teeth. She had lost count of how many hours or days she had been in this chamber. The Galactic Empire had captured her during a covert mission to sabotage their orbital fortress, and they had wasted no time in bringing her here, desperate for information on the Terran resistance. She had already suffered through electrical nerve disruption, cellular degradation, and even direct neural pain simulation. But she refused to speak. Zalvok sighed and signaled to his enforcer, a hulking insectoid brute with 4 arms and a jagged exoskeleton. The creature stepped forward, gripping a long, serrated instrument that dripped with some unknown acidic substance. Sarah steeled herself. She had endured pain before, battlefield injuries, near-death encounters, but this was something else. This was the deliberate, systematic destruction of her body. The enforcer's first strike tore through the flesh of her abdomen, sending a fresh wave of agony through her nervous system. Sarah clenched her jaw, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a scream. "Still resisting," Zalvok mused, tilting his head. "Fascinating. But you will tell me what I wish to know. The human will is a myth, nothing more." Sarah spat a mouthful of blood onto the floor. "You don't know a damn thing about humans." Zalvok smirked. "Then let's see how long you last." He tapped his gauntlet again, and the machine behind Sarah whirred to life. A searing, invisible force tore through her nerve endings like fire, flooding her mind with raw, unfiltered agony. Her vision swam, her body trembled, and finally, her voice broke. She screamed. The Inquisitor watched impassively as Sarah's body convulsed against the restraints. The machine pushed her nervous system past its limits, shutting down organs, rupturing veins. The pain became white-hot nothingness, and for the first time, true fear gripped her. She was dying. Her heartbeat slowed. Her vision darkened. Her mind slipped into oblivion. And then, silence. Zalvok exhaled through his nostrils, disappointed. Pathetic. I expected more. He waved a clawed hand toward the enforcer. Dispose of the body. The insectoid brute unshackled Sarah's lifeless form and dragged her unceremoniously across the room. A hatch in the floor opened, revealing a deep, dark pit. The Empire's execution disposal chamber. Countless bodies had been thrown into its depths, their corpses left to decay in the void beneath the fortress. The enforcer tossed Sarah's body into the abyss. Zalvok didn't watch as she fell. He had already moved on to his next interrogation. 40 minutes later, darkness, cold, silence. Then, a spark. A violent shudder racked Sarah's body. A sudden, overwhelming heat coursed through her veins, burning away the pain, the weakness, the death itself. Every cell in her body roared to life, regenerating faster than should have been possible. Her heart restarted with a powerful thud. Her eyes snapped open. For a moment, she simply breathed. She should have been dead. She had died. But now she was alive. And not just alive. She felt different, stronger. Her wounds were gone. Her senses were heightened. Something inside her had awakened. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the steady, powerful beat of her heart. "What the hell?" she whispered. Then she heard footsteps above. Guards. A slow, cold smile spread across Sarah's lips as she rose to her feet. She had been tortured, broken, killed. But she was back. And now it was her turn. Rebirth and the awakening. Sarah Vaughn stood in the darkness, her breath steady, her body thrumming with impossible energy. The last thing she remembered was dying, truly dying, and yet here she was very much alive. More than alive. She flexed her fingers, staring at her hands. The gaping wounds from the torture chamber were gone. Her skin, once torn and bloodied, was now perfectly whole. But it wasn't just that. She felt stronger. A sound echoed above, the clatter of armored boots. Sarah's gaze snapped upward, her vision sharpening in the dim light. Two alien guards patrolled the platform above the pit where she had been discarded. Their guttural voices muttered in their native tongue, oblivious to the corpse they had thrown away moments ago. A slow, cold realization spread through Sarah's mind. They think I'm dead. Good. She clenched her fists, feeling a strange new strength surge through her limbs. She jumped, not just a normal jump, but an impossible, gravity-defying leap, her body soaring upward as if it weighed nothing. The guards barely had time to react. Sarah landed between them, her feet hitting the platform with a metallic clang. She moved without thinking, her instincts sharpened beyond human limits. Her fist lashed out, striking the first guard's head with bone-crushing force. The alien skull caved in with a sickening crack, and his body crumpled. The second guard fumbled for his weapon, but Sarah was faster. She snatched the energy rifle from his hands, flipped it around, and fired. A bolt of searing plasma tore through his chest, sending him sprawling. Silence. Sarah stood over the fallen bodies, heart pounding. She had fought before, trained in countless battles, but this was different. Every movement felt effortless. Every sensation, her sight, her hearing, even the air around her, felt amplified. Something had changed. She crouched down, inspecting one of the dead guards. His communicator was still active. She tapped it, listening to the garbled transmissions. Static, then a voice. Prisoner disposal complete. Returning to station operations. They still had no idea she was alive. Good. Sarah gritted her teeth, her mind racing. She needed to figure out what had happened to her, and fast. The awakening. Moving quickly, she stripped one of the guards of his weapons and tactical gear, securing a rifle across her back. She felt no fatigue, no lingering pain from her torture. And then, memories flashed in her mind. A darkened lab, the cold touch of metal restraints. Scientists arguing. A voice, deep and commanding. Humanity was never meant to be weak. She staggered, gripping her head. What was this? A hallucination? A forgotten memory? And then she knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some freak miracle. This was inside her all along. Something ancient. Something buried in human DNA, waiting for the right trigger. And she had died to awaken it. Her breathing steadied. Whatever had happened, whatever she had become, she wasn't going to waste it. She needed to move. The escape. Sarah navigated the dim corridors of the fortress, moving like a shadow. Guards patrolled the halls, but she was faster, deadlier. Every time she encountered resistance, she struck with brutal precision, silent, efficient, unstoppable. She reached a security terminal and tapped into the system. The layout of the fortress appeared in front of her, a map of death and suffering. Hundreds of prisoners, humans, were locked away in the lower cells. Her hands clenched into fists. She hadn't been the only one captured. Others were suffering the same torture she had endured. Some wouldn't survive. She exhaled, making a decision. I'm not leaving alone. With swift keystrokes, she disabled the cell locks. Across the facility, alarms blared as steel doors slammed open. 1,000 prisoners would soon flood the halls. Chaos was coming. Sarah grabbed a communicator from Fallen Guard and whispered into it. To anyone who can hear me, you're free. Take up arms. Fight back. The Empire thinks we're weak. She smirked, her eyes burning with renewed fury. The wrath of humanity. The fortress was drowning in chaos. Alarms blared through the metallic halls, red warning lights flashing against the cold steel. Sarah Vaughn moved through the corridors like a storm given form, her stolen rifle snapping off precise shots. The guards, once confident in their control, were in full retreat. The prisoners had answered her call. Across the station, former captives, humans who had been starved, beaten, tortured, were now armed and furious. They surged through the halls, wielding stolen plasma rifles, crude metal pipes, and sheer human rage. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they were paying for it. A relentless force. Sarah rounded a corner and came face to face with 3 guards. They barely had time to react. Her first shot caught the nearest one in the throat, burning through alien flesh. The second guard raised his weapon, but Sarah was already moving, lunging forward. Her fist smashed into his jaw with unnatural force, sending his body flying into the steel wall with a sickening crack. The third guard turned to run. Sarah shot him in the back. No mercy. Not after what they had done. She pressed on, scanning the halls for any sign of the remaining prisoners. The resistance was growing. What had started as an escape was becoming a full-scale uprising, and Sarah was leading it. A message to the Empire. As she advanced, she spotted a communications terminal up ahead. A smirk formed on her lips. The Galactic Empire controlled the flow of information with an iron grip, but now she had a chance to send a message of her own. She reached the terminal and hacked into the system, her fingers flying over the controls. Within seconds, she accessed the station-wide broadcast. A camera flickered to life. Sarah looked directly into the lens. "To the so-called Galactic Empire," she said, her voice cold, unwavering. "You tortured us. You broke us. You killed us." She leaned in slightly, her eyes burning with something primal. "And yet, here we are, across the fortress." Her face appeared on every screen. The prisoners cheered. The guards hesitated. Doubt crept into the Empire's ranks. Sarah tilted her head. "You thought humanity was weak. You thought we would beg. But here's something you never understood." She raised her plasma rifle and fired into the camera, cutting the transmission. "We don't die. We fight." The Inquisitor strikes back. The response was immediate. A deep, metallic boom rattled the walls. The lights flickered, and suddenly, reinforcements arrived. Elite enforcers, taller, faster, stronger than the standard guards, poured into the corridors, wielding heavy plasma cannons. Their black armor gleamed under the emergency lights. At the front of them stood Inquisitor Zalvok. His reptilian features were twisted in rage, his yellow eyes glowing with hate. "You," he snarled, staring at Sarah. "This is impossible. You died." Sarah tilted her head, smirking. "Yeah, about that." Zalvok let out a guttural roar and raised his arm. A pulse of dark energy erupted from his gauntlet, aimed straight at her. Sarah moved faster than thought, dodging just as the attack obliterated the steel wall behind her. Shrapnel flew, but she was already closing the distance. The enforcers opened fire. Sarah dove into cover, plasma bolts scorching the walls around her. The prisoners, now battle-hardened, fought back, their newfound freedom fueling their desperation. Explosions rocked the station as the battle reached its peak. But Sarah wasn't here just to fight. She had one objective left: destroying the Empire's stronghold. Sarah tapped into her stolen gauntlet, pulling up the fortress schematics. She found what she was looking for: the main reactor core. If they could overload it, this entire station would become a fireball in space. She relayed the plan through her communicator. "All units, head for the reactor. We end this now." The prisoners, now resistance fighters, rallied behind her. The Empire burns. The Galactic Empire's fortress trembled under the weight of battle. Explosions rocked the steel corridors, fire and smoke spilling into the air as prisoners turned revolutionaries clashed with the remaining Imperial forces. Sarah Vaughn sprinted through the chaos, her heart hammering in her chest. Her target was clear: the reactor core. Behind her, the freed captives fought with newfound fury, overwhelming the Empire's elite enforcers. What had started as an escape had become an extermination, and Sarah intended to finish the job. Into the core. She burst through the final blast doors, entering the massive cylindrical chamber that housed the station's power source. Towering plasma conduits pulsed with energy, feeding the fortress's weapons, defenses, and life support. A control terminal blinked at the far end of the room. She had to overload it, but she wasn't alone. A shadow loomed behind her. The air grew heavy with an unnatural pressure. Sarah turned just in time to see Inquisitor Zalvok step into the chamber. His dark armor shimmered, his reptilian eyes burning with hate. "You will not leave this place alive," he hissed. Sarah smirked, rolling her shoulders. "Funny. That's what you said last time." Zalvok roared, raising his gauntlet hand. A crackling wave of dark energy erupted toward her. Sarah moved, her reflexes sharper than ever. She dodged left, the blast melting a chunk of the reactor wall behind her. She fired her rifle in return. The plasma bolts hit, but Zalvok barely flinched. His armor absorbed the shots, the energy dissipating across its surface. Sarah cursed. He wasn't just another Imperial officer. He was something else. The final duel. Zalvok lunged, his clawed hand slashing toward her throat. Sarah ducked, rolling beneath the attack. She came up fast, driving her fist into his ribs with inhuman force. Crack! Zalvok snarled in pain, staggering back. His eyes widened, surprise and fury mixing together. "You are unnatural," he growled. Sarah grinned. "No, I'm human." She attacked again, this time faster than he could react. Her fist slammed into his armor, denting the unbreakable metal. She twisted, delivering a brutal kick to his knee. The Inquisitor stumbled, rage twisting his face. He lashed out wildly, his strength still monstrous. His strike caught Sarah in the side, sending her crashing into a control panel. Pain flared through her ribs, but she recovered instantly. She was beyond pain now, beyond limits. Sarah wiped blood from her mouth and smiled. "That all you got?" Zalvok roared and charged, but Sarah was faster. She ducked under his wild swing, grabbing his arm and twisting with a force no human should have possessed. Snap! The Inquisitor howled as his elbow shattered. His massive form staggered, but he wasn't down yet. Sarah didn't give him the chance. With a final, unstoppable blow, she drove her fist into his chest, cracking his rib cage and crushing his heart. Zalvok gasped, his body trembling. His yellow eyes locked onto hers, filled with disbelief. "You are a monster," he rasped. Sarah leaned in. "No, I'm human." And then she ripped her hand away, letting his lifeless body collapse to the ground. The end of the fortress. Sarah didn't waste time. She sprinted to the terminal, her fingers flying across the controls. Overload sequence initiated. The station's core rumbled. The countdown began. 5 minutes until detonation. Sarah activated her communicator. "Everyone, evacuate now." Across the station, the Resistance fighters heard the order and scrambled for stolen ships. The fortress's guards, those who remained, fled in terror. Sarah grabbed Zalvok's gauntlet, yanking it off his corpse. If it could survive plasma blasts, it might be useful later. Then she ran. Escape and the beginning of a war. The station shook violently as she sprinted through the collapsing corridors. Fire erupted around her, the walls splitting apart. She reached the hangar bay, where several stolen transport ships were already lifting off. A pilot waved her over. "Vaughn, let's go." Sarah leaped onto the boarding ramp, just as the ship took off. Through the viewport, she watched as the Galactic Empire's fortress exploded, a massive fireball consuming the once impenetrable stronghold. A cheer erupted from the freed prisoners. But Sarah only watched, her expression hard. This was just one battle. The Empire would come for them. They would hunt her. But that didn't scare her. She flexed her fingers, feeling the strength coursing through her. The Empire thought they had broken her, but all they had done was make her unstoppable. Sarah activated the stolen communicator, sending a signal across the system. Humanity does not die. We rise. And the war had just begun.